What's up guys, my name is Liam and today we're going to be doing a video on the glorious Series 1 Pro. How does it stack up to other competition that's on the market? Let's find out. Here we have the glorious Series 1 Pro, and I just want to tell you guys right now that I've absolutely had a phenomenal time with this mouse. I actually got this on the original launch, the pre-order. It does have small minor issues, but overall I think this is a great mouse. I've had a great time playing with it. I made it for a couple weeks or so back when I first got it, and overall it's held up pretty well. So really quick, there's some really small issues on it, nothing that really affects my gameplay or anything like that. So let's go ahead and drop a test on how the switches and everything sound on the mouse. All right, so as you guys can see, it's pretty good overall. I am getting this weird like popping noise, and to be completely honest with you, I never even knew that it was there. I was pushing all over this mouse because there's been people online saying that they have like shaking and rattling and grinding on their buttons and stuff like that. I don't have any of those issues necessarily, but as you can tell, I do got the popping on the shell. It actuates when you push really hard on the back of the mouse. Again, I've tried like palm gripping this mouse, messing around with it, and I never noticed it being an issue. It's just you put a lot of force. So starting out with this mouse, the weight on it is phenomenal, 51 grams. And I'm kind of a weight snob currently. I feel like 50 grams is about the sweet point. I personally feel like with 50 grams, it's the perfect weight for a small mouse. And I know it's very hard to achieve, and I'm almost making it come off like sound like it's nothing. But I just absolutely love mice that are around this weight, that are this size. So let's go ahead and compare it to everything else that we got out there on the market and see where we're at. So I've already done the video of the Razer Viper Mini versus the World. I did throw this mouse in there, and I brought it back in here really quick for maybe those of you that haven't seen that video. These are very similar. The difference is that the Razer Viper Mini has a bit of a smaller hump and it feels a little bit more narrow. So overall, the model Series 1 Pro feels like a little bit of a larger mouse than the Viper Mini. Which one do I prefer? In all honesty, I do prefer the Razer Viper Mini a little bit more. I'm not really a fan of aggressive humps up here in the middle. Not saying per se that this one is aggressive, but I just don't really like middle high humps for my personal experience. Now, if that's something that you're into, you like the G Pro Super Light, the HTS, any style like that, then this could definitely be a good option for you. My personal one small complaint about the Viper Mini is I've always felt like it's just been a little too narrow for my taste, where this one is a little bit wider. It does still feel a bit on the narrow side. Again, they're very similar, but I do prefer the wideness of the Series 1 Pro. The texture of the mouse, it honestly feels pretty similar to the Razer Viper Mini. The Razer Viper Mini does have more texture and it is rougher, gives you a little bit more grip, whereas this one's a bit smoother, but overall has that same type of a feel, not too much being different there. All right, so what I really wanted to do here is I wanted to compare this to other offerings on the market. Obviously, this if you're looking to get a Razer Viper Mini clone, I do prefer this over the pawnage version because that version is over 60 grams. So I feel like they nailed the weight on this. Balance is phenomenal. They could definitely work on the left to right balance a bit, but overall not too terrible. Really good stuff there. So this mouse is featuring a 3370 sensor, and I have not had any issues in gaming as far as connectivity goes. Wireless connectivity, the switches feel great. Everything feels really good on my copy. So in my opinion, the first mouse that this is the most comparable to is going to be something like the HTS Plus Classic. This version of the mouse is also sporting a 3370 sensor, and this mouse is also coming in about $109. Right now, the Series 1 Pro on Max Gaming is also coming in at $109. So when you look at the sensor specs and the price, these sit pretty evenly. So let's break down a shape comparison between these two really quick. Definitely the Series 1 Pro is closer to the Viper Mini. This mouse feels a bit more narrow than this, and the hump feels a bit less aggressive. And what I mean by that, on the HTS Plus, I feel like the hump slowly tapers out. Whereas I feel like on this one, you got the hump, but then I feel like it more quickly drops off. Overall, giving it a more narrow feeling in the palm when you're doing a relaxed claw grip. And also the overall width of this mouse, I do feel like this definitely feels a bit wider. So even though they're pretty similar in length, I would say this version feels like a more narrow, longer version, even though it's not that big of a difference, whereas this one feels kind of like a shorter, fatter, wider version. As for the build quality on both of these mice, I definitely feel like G-Wolves pulls ahead. After really testing these mice and getting in depth with them as I possibly could, I do feel like the clicks there, if you can see there, it's not like it's extremely distracting or anything like that, but I feel like when you click down, you can like click left or right. Like it's not a huge difference, but there's kind of some play, and it's not really as consistent when you're clicking down on this mouse. Again, when you're playing in game, you don't notice it too terribly, but I feel like with the G-Wolves mouse, I feel like every time you click it, it goes straight down. It doesn't like click down off to the left or click down off to the right. And again, this is very small and a tiny detail. It's just something that I slightly noticed. So there is a little bit of flex. It's not like terrible in this, but this shell is a little bit, it just kind of moves around a bit more. And I do feel like the G-Wolves mouse overall just feels more like a more solid mouse. So again, even though these are priced at the same price point, if I had to pick between these two, in my personal opinion, obviously it comes down to shape, which one you prefer. I do feel like this one is constructed better than this one. And overall, I feel like I have more confidence when I'm playing with the HTS Plus. I'll go ahead and drop it on the scale here for you. So this being 50 grams, and honestly, I don't notice too much of a difference in weight between these two mice. They both feel great. All right, the next mouse I got on the list here is going to be the Finalmouse Starlight 12, the small version. I do have every iteration of this mouse, but this is just the closest one I had to me here. So we'll start out the weight on this one. This one's 44 grams. And is there a difference between weight? Yeah, you absolutely do feel a difference in weight between these two. I didn't want to compare these two, but I knew people were going to be asking. And the reason I didn't want to compare them is because the Finalmouse is $200 and it's not really easily obtainable. You have to buy it like off eBay or something like that. I do kind of like the shape of what the Finalmouse offerings, both the medium and the small. This one has a more aggressive, higher hump on it, and it tapers off quickly, whereas this one's lower and it just has a very smooth, subtle transition there on the Finalmouse. And as far as the sides go, this one feels a bit more narrow towards the center than the Finalmouse. The Finalmouse doesn't have as aggressive curves on the side, and it does feel a little bit flatter on the side. The next mouse I'd like to compare it to is the Pulsar X2 Mini. And this is an absolutely phenomenal mouse. The reason I'm comparing these two is they do have a little bit of a different shape, but they are in the smaller size category, and the pricing on these is pretty similar. And where I think that the Pulsar takes a leap, in my personal opinion, is it does have the 3395 sensor. And, you know, honestly, I know a lot of people out there have been reporting about quality issues with their Pulsar mice, just as they have for the Glorious. Luckily, with my copy of the Pulsar, this thing has been solid. I've had no issues with it. The buttons are phenomenal. Everything feels great. So overall, I do feel like between these two mice, I personally prefer the shape of the Pulsar X2 Mini. For all the smaller mice offerings on the market right now, I do feel like this is the best fingertip grip mouse on the market. It does have the flat sides, and overall, I feel like this mouse feels phenomenal. The clicks on the Pulsar, they feel better. They have less pre-travel. These feel just slightly spongier, I would say, where these feel more clicky, responsive. Scroll wheel on this one feels a bit more defined. Okay, 53 grams. So it's only even 2 grams heavier. So I don't know why, but it does feel a little heavier. You do notice a difference with it. Between the two, this one does definitely feel a little lighter, but aside from that, again, I do prefer the shape of this personally, but these are quite different. This mouse does feel like a wider mouse, and it's got the rear hump, which I prefer over the mid hump. So as you can see here, and the rear hump on this mouse is pretty aggressive. So where this one has an aggressive hump up here in the middle and then it tapers off, this one slants up and then it's got the aggressive rear hump right there. If you're fingertipping this mouse or even relaxed claw gripping this mouse for my style, where I place my palm on the mouse pad, it doesn't really interfere much. That hump doesn't interfere for me, but I have heard people that like to get down lower on the mouse say that the hump is a little too aggressive for them. So definitely something to notice. So I definitely think the Pulsar X2 Mini is a great choice, and it really just comes down to your play style and your grip and what you prefer in your mouse. All right, next up is the HTX. And the HTX is actually a pretty different feeling mouse from this one. They may kind of look similar on camera, but again, where this mouse has a way higher, a more aggressive middle hump, and it starts tapering off quicker, the HTX is overall a flatter feeling mouse, and it doesn't taper off as quickly. The sides go out further, and it definitely gives you more contact if you're going to be down low trying to grip this mouse with like a relaxed claw grip style. For fingertip grip between the two, you know, I would honestly say, so here's my gripe with fingertip grip really quick. For me with fingertip gripping, I see a lot of people recommend mice out there to fingertip grip. And I think when a mouse feels longer, it gets harder. But another important thing is I've seen a lot of people recommend the HTX, and I actually get a lot of questions about the HTX for fingertip grip. Can you fingertip grip this mouse? Yes, you can. If you can see here, it curves in really quick. If you look at the base, they're actually about the same length on the base, and much smaller hump here, much higher hump here. And this one tapers off much slowly towards the rear, where this one goes much more aggressively. This mouse does feel longer, the Series 1 Pro. It's got the higher sides. The sides, they go up for a while before they taper in. This is the 4K version of the HTX, and they do offer a non-4K version. It still has a $33.95 in it, and it's $119. Do I think it'd be worth getting the Glorious over the HTX? I mean, I honestly think that the HTX is just better in every single way, to be completely honest with you. The build quality, the weight, we'll throw that up here really quick. Comes in at 44 grams, 43 grams for the solid shell, 44 with side grips on. When you get the non 4K version, that version also gets lighter as well. You can get the holes on the top. I think it goes down to like 36 or 37 grams. Unbelievable stuff. Honestly, this thing is just a marvel and absolutely an unbelievable mouse. So yeah, this is where. So like I said, this is where it gets harder and harder to recommend this mouse. Even though I love it, I love what Glorious has done. I think it's a great mouse. If you're a Viper Mini fan, yeah, but the Atlantis and the Atlantis Mini. Look, I know I sit here and I praise the Atlantis and the Atlantis Mini in all my videos. But this is a prime example of why I do. When you have to understand, when this mouse is going for $109, and then this one is $89. Now, that's if they're available. It's not available right now. But let's drop a weight on the Lamzu Atlantis Mini. 51 grams with grips. So they come in about the same weight. So these are about the same size, as you can see there. This one's slightly, or excuse me, the Series 1 Pro is slightly longer, but overall, for my personal preference, I prefer the rear hump, and I prefer mice that are a little wider. And the Lamzu Atlantis Mini definitely feels a lot wider than this mouse. So if you prefer a skinnier, more narrow type of feeling mouse like the Viper Mini, this definitely has, the Lamzu Atlantis Mini definitely has a wider feel to it. We'll go ahead and do a shape comparison here. As you can see, it comes up to a hump in the rear, whereas this one has a hump in the middle. And the hump on this one is not too aggressive. I would say out of all of the mice with a rear hump that I've tried, the Lamzu mice have the smoothest hump out of all of them. As far as the build quality on the Atlantis goes, it feels phenomenal. Switches are great. Scroll is perfect. I love my side buttons. Everything's perfect on it. It has the 3395 sensor on it. So yeah, the fact that this is cheaper than this mouse is why it kind of makes this Series 1 Pro a little harder to recommend. And the last mouse I'm going to compare this to is going to be the Model O minus wireless. Okay. So obviously these are both glorious mice. This is the original Model O minus wireless that came out. I did pre-order this mouse, and let's go ahead and do a weight scale really quick. 64 grams on this. And I'm not even joking, you guys. This is a world of difference. So if you're a fan of the Model O minus wireless, the difference in these mice is that this mouse, you know, honestly, they feel very similar. I feel like this mouse is a huge improvement over the Model O minus though, because my issue with this mouse is I love this mouse when I got it, but I feel like the way that the side buttons are positioned, when I grab it, I just feel like this mouse is so low with where the side buttons sit that my thumb always drags on the mouse pad when I try and use it. And I feel like I'm always cramped under the side buttons when I hold this mouse. I try not to click those side buttons. So when I heard that they were coming out this mouse, it was going to be more than 10 grams lighter than the Model O minus, and that they fixed the shape on it so you have more room on the side for your thumb. I was excited. I was stoked about it. And I can say that overall, the Model O minus feels skinnier and it feels lower to the ground. It feels flatter. So again, I do like the flatter feel typically, but just because the fact that I had that issue with my thumb on this mouse is definitely where the difference on these are. And as you can see, they kind of put the curves more in the middle of the Series 1 Pro, as this one, I feel like the curves are kind of more up towards the front. So here's a shape side comparison here for you guys. So you can see what they look like. You could definitely see this one's higher right here. But overall, I absolutely prefer the Series 1 Pro over the Model O minus. I feel like it's a huge upgrade. And the weight difference is absolutely phenomenal. Honestly, comparing these next to each other, this thing feels like a brick compared to this. The balancing on this mouse is honestly just about perfect. All right, guys, so there's my final thought on the Series 1 Pro. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I love this mouse. I think it's great. When I first got it, I was excited. I just really feel like this mouse just kind of came out at the last minute. It literally came out right before everybody dropped 3395s, and the market just really took off with tech, all this 4K, the optical switches, stuff like that. So, you know, had this mouse come out a year earlier, I feel like this mouse would have absolutely knocked it out of the park. And it does make it a hard buy only because of the fact coming in at $109, there's so many other options out in the market. I think Glorious is moving in the right direction. Unfortunately, they just kind of got left behind with the tech and stuff like that. The last thing I want to say about this mouse is I feel like, at the price range this mouse is at, it does make it a little bit harder of a buy. Now, obviously, if you compare it to something like the Viper Mini Signature Edition, it's a steal. If you're obsessed with the Viper Mini shape, you can't wait any longer, this is definitely going to be your best option. And the closest thing to the Viper Mini out there, coming in at around 50 grams, that I would absolutely recommend you guys. But just with the overall specs and everything like that, if you're open to different shape, if you're open to trying out a rear hump or a wider mouse or something like that, the other options are honestly pretty hard to argue with. And honestly, if this mouse would come in probably around like a $60, $70 price point range, then I would call this mouse an absolute banger. And I don't think anything around that price range off the top of my head would be able to compete with that, to be completely honest with you. Great mouse. Love what Glorious is doing. I hope they keep it up. I hope they keep moving forward, and I'm really excited to see what they do in the future. So if you guys have any other questions or anything I can do for you, please let me know down in the comments below. And aside from that, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, please subscribe. And until next time, we'll see you guys later.